Hi, everyone. Welcome to week 4 of distance learning and welcome to the 4th marking period of this year. Our last marking period in science is human biology, how our body takes care of itself. And so this week, we're going to look at just a general overview of our body and the concept of homeostasis. And I don't know if you remember homeostasis from 7th grade. We did talk a little bit about that when we were learning about cells and tissues and organs. And hopefully you did this little gizmo where you tried to keep the girl alive. You changed her exercise level, her water level, her sugar level, and tried to keep her going for as long as possible. If you did not do that in 7th grade, no worries. We're going to take a look at homeostasis again this year. So homeostasis is just our body's ability to maintain internal balance. And that means it can stay the same inside no matter what's going on outside and no matter what we throw at our body. So this includes more than just temperature. Last year we talked a lot about body temperature. If you are too warm, then you sweat to cool off. If you are too cold, then you shiver to warm up. But it's more than just that. It includes things like if you get sick, your body's body temperature will go up. You'll get a fever to try to fight the sickness. Or if you drink too much water, you're going to have to go to the bathroom. So in order to reduce the blood level of water. So fortunately for us, homeostasis is something that we don't have to think about. Our bodies just do it without us worrying about it. And really it's our brain that's controlling it and helping our systems to coordinate with each other to make sure that we stay alive. So basically what happens is our body uses feedback loops. And a feedback loop is where something happens in our body, there's a stimulus, and our body responds a certain way. And that response can either keep the stimulus going or it can stop the stimulus. And so we call these kinds of feedback loops positive feedback loops and negative feedback loops. They are how our body does homeostasis. So let's look at a negative feedback loop first, because there's more of these in our body than positive ones. So here's an example. You have pizza for lunch or dinner, and we eat the pizza and our blood sugar starts to rise, and that blood sugar is called glucose. And so if you have a lot of sugar in your bloodstream, then your pancreas starts to make a hormone called insulin to process that sugar, to help the sugar get put into our cells so that our cells can use it. You don't want the sugar in your blood, you want it in your cells because it's energy for us. So what happens is the pancreas makes insulin, and that helps to put the sugar or the glucose back into our cells, and then our blood sugar drops, and so we get hungry and we eat again. So this is a negative feedback loop where you eat something, the glucose levels rise, and then your pancreas makes insulin to decrease the levels of glucose in your bloodstream, because too much sugar in your blood is not a good thing. So it's a negative feedback loop because we increase the sugar and our body decreases the sugar. So that's what makes it negative. Controlling body temperature is another example of a negative feedback loop. So your normal body temperature is 98.6, or if you use Celsius, it's 37 degrees Celsius. So that's considered normal for most human beings. So if our body temperature goes up a little bit because it's hot outside or you're working out, then our body is going to respond by opening up our blood vessels, letting some heat out, and our sweat glands will start to make sweat to cool us off. And so then our body temperature comes back down. So the temperature goes up and our body responds to bring it down. That's a negative feedback loop because something goes up and our body brings it down. The opposite is also true. If we are in a very cold place and our body temperature drops below 98.6, that's called hypothermia, then our body's going to go into a mechanism to increase the body temperature, to conserve the heat, and to make our muscles contract and shiver to bring our body temperature back up. So if the temperature drops, our body responds by bringing it back up. This is another example of a negative feedback loop because a process starts in our body and we respond by reversing it. That's what makes it a negative feedback loop. Now, a positive feedback loop is a little different. In a positive feedback loop, there's some sort of stimulus, and our response makes the stimulus keep happening. So here's a good example. If you were to go on a diet and exercise and people start to notice how good you look, they'll give you compliments and you'll feel stronger and you'll feel healthier. And so that makes you want to continue to diet and exercise. So that's a positive feedback loop. We're continuing the stimulus. We want more of what we started with because more is helpful to us. So that's a positive loop. So here is a good example of a positive feedback loop in our body. It's blood clotting, and you would think blood clotting is bad, but actually a blood clot is just a scab, and it's preventing bleeding. So if you get a cut somewhere outside of in a blood vessel, then some little cells in your blood called platelets will rush to that area where the cut is, and they will make a chemical called fibrin. And fibrin will create like a screen over the cut. And the fibrin catches more platelets, which makes more fibrin, which catches more platelets. And this will keep happening until you actually have a scab that prevents any bleeding out. And so this is an example of a positive feedback loop because the platelets make fibrin, which catch platelets, which make more fibrin. And this continues the process until we don't need it anymore. And so that's a positive feedback loop. So in your notes, you're going to want to write down later today, a positive loop encourages more of the same, and a negative loop stops the process. So these are the two sketches that we want you to write down on the OneNote page today. A positive feedback loop has a stimulus, and that creates a B response, which makes more of A, which makes more of B, and it keeps going until we don't need the loop anymore. And a negative feedback loop is where A is the stimulus and it makes B, but B stops A because A is something we don't want. And again, our body uses more negative feedback loops than it uses positive. Okay, so how does our body actually do homeostasis? Well, it uses feedback loops, but the key to a feedback loop working is organization. And our body is organized into various levels, and those levels help us to take care of ourselves. Now, you learned these levels of organization in your body last year in 7th grade, but let's just review them again real quickly. The cells are the smallest unit of a living thing. You were able to look at cells last year and learn how cells make copies of themselves. But cells really are not an efficient way to take care of our body. So cells are organized into groups, and those groups of cells that work together are called tissues. And tissues are a little more efficient in taking care of ourselves. But again, tissues usually don't work alone. Instead, those tissues are found working together as an organ. And then organs, again, sometimes do their own job, but they still work together with other organs. And a group of organs working together is called a system or an organ system. And all the organ systems put together is called the organism. So you learned cells, tissues, organs, and systems last year. So we're just going to review that a little bit right now and focus this year on systems, specific systems. So here's the basic cell, and you learned all these little parts. I don't know if you remember the mitochondria and the endoplasmic reticulum and the nucleus and the cell membrane. And every cell looks a little bit differently. And a human adult actually has 100 trillion cells in it at any given time. So cells are super, super, super small, and they usually work together. And there are different kinds of cells in our bodies. The picture here is a picture of muscle cells. They're actually muscle fibers, and the ends on the picture signify the nucleus. But muscle cells look like this so that they can contract and relax and move things through your body. So cells look different depending on where they are. They might look like the picture at the top, or they might look like the picture at the bottom. But again, cells don't work alone. They work together in groups called tissues. And there are really only 4 kinds of tissues in our body: muscle tissue, nervous tissue, epithelial tissue, and connective tissue. So muscle tissue is a group of muscle cells, and that's like the picture that I showed you in the previous slide. Nervous tissue is a group of nerve cells, and we're going to look at the nervous system in detail later, so you'll see how they look different from muscle cells. Epithelial cells is the outer coverings and the inner coverings of our body. They protect us. So it's like your skin cells. And then connective tissue is everything else. It's like bone tissue and blood tissue. And so there's all different kinds of connective tissue inside our bodies. But tissues don't work alone either. Tissues that work together to do a job are called an organ. And so your stomach is an organ. Your skin is actually an organ. A muscle is an organ. A bone is an organ. The pancreas is an organ. Your heart is an organ. The brain is an organ. So you have organs all over your body. But organs, again, cannot work alone. So instead, our bodies are put together with organs working together as an organ system. So any group of organs that are working together make up an organ system. And if any one part of the system isn't working, then the whole rest of the system usually falls apart. So what are the organ systems in our body that do homeostasis? Well, there are 11 of them. And here are their names: the integumentary system, the skeletal system, muscular system, cardiovascular system, respiratory system, digestive system, endocrine system, nervous system, immune system, excretory system, and the reproductive systems, either male or female. Now, you may have heard of some of those before. You may not have heard of others. We're not going to learn all 11 this year, but let's take a peek at what each of the 11 does. So the integumentary system includes your skin and hair and nails, and it's all about protecting your body, protecting the inside of your body and kind of holding it together. The skeletal system, you may have learned in elementary school, it's of course your bones, and they are there to support and protect your body parts. The muscular system includes actually 3 types of muscles, but the ones you're most familiar with are your skeletal muscles, which of course move your bones. Digestive system, of course, breaks down nutrients into cell-sized pieces, but then also absorbs them into your blood to send them to your cells. So that's your digestive system. Cardiovascular system. Cardio means heart, vascular means vessels, so it's the heart and all the blood vessels that transport materials around your body in your blood. The respiratory system is all about taking in oxygen and getting out carbon dioxide so that you can survive, because you need oxygen to live. Your nervous system is all about controlling the body by using electrical messages. So it sends and receives electrical messages to control all the organs in your body. The endocrine system is also about controlling your body, but it's glands that make hormones. It uses chemical messages, which are the hormones, instead of electrical messages to control various things in your body. Our immune system helps us fight disease and other kinds of invaders, whether it's like a splinter or something like that, or it could be, of course, a virus or bacteria. Our excretory system removes waste from the blood and regulates all our body fluids, includes lymph and lymph nodes, and of course your kidneys and your bladder. And then there's the reproductive system, and in females it's all about producing eggs and sheltering an unborn baby, and in males it's of course producing sperm. So homeostasis is your body taking care of itself, maintaining internal balance regardless of what happens outside our bodies. And our body is organized into cells, tissues, organs, and systems to be able to do homeostasis. Those systems use feedback loops to keep things going or to stop things that we don't want. And there are 11 systems that work together to make this happen. So now what we're going to ask you to do today, now that you've finished this video, is to try a couple of activities to show us your understanding of homeostasis and the body organization. So the first thing you're going to have to do is try to match some stimuli to their responses to see how your body responds to a stimulus. And then we have another activity for you where you try to keep a girl alive And there are some questions that go along with that. You're going to have to click in the boxes on the interactive to help you figure out what each system does to keep the girl alive. And then we have a feedback loop activity for you where you have to try to figure out if it's a positive or a negative feedback loop. And then there's another online activity for you where the systems are shown for you on a human, and then you have to try to figure out which two systems are being used to do any job, because systems work together. They don't work alone. And last but not least, just to make sure you know which system does what, there's a little matching activity for the systems and their function or their jobs in our bodies. So continue on the OneNote page, keep going until you see the all done message at the bottom. And good luck. We'll see you next week.